Hi, everybody. Welcome to Hallmarkies Podcast. And we are back to be talking about All Creatures Great and Small, Season 1, Episodes 4, 5, and 6. And we had debated, are we going to call this the Great podcast or All Podcasts Great and Small? Or what was the one that you said?
Yeah, all podcasts great and small. It's a bit wordy, but
Yeah,
the show title's wordy. So.
a bit ungainly there. But if you have suggestions for the podcast, let us know. And so we're finishing up season 1. These are short seasons, which is nice. And then we'll have a recap of the Christmas episode for season 1 or series 1. And then we'll continue forward. And this first episode we're going to talk about is called A Tricky Case. And this is such a charming episode. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. And it's James is alarmed to receive a call from Mrs. Pumphrey, who fears her beloved dog, Tricky, might be dying. What did you think of this episode overall?
This is such a cute episode, and it's also just like emotional going back and knowing that, this is, one of Dame Edma, Dame Diana, one of her last performances before she passed away.
Oh, really? I didn't
Um,
realize that.
yeah, so she passed away and Patricia Hodge takes over the role in season 2 and 3.
Mm,
Um, So yeah, it's definitely a different performance,
uh-huh.
feels like, but still sort of the character, but they sort of managed to distinguish it and make it of their own.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back and watching it is is quite is quite something. And yeah, I just thought Tristan and Sigrid were just so funny in these episodes, like,
Yeah.
and Mrs. Hall just trying to keep control of it all.
Hmm. Yeah, and it was interesting to see the connection with Siegfried and Tristan and James over these animals. Like the connection that they have with Tricky, the connection with the sheepdog,
Yeah,
and that they can still, after all the animals that they have spent time with, they can still be kind of scared of an animal, which I
yeah.
think is interesting, of the
Mm-hmm.
sheepdog. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely something that I see every time I like go to, dog parks or
Hmm.
I've always had big dogs, but sometimes sometimes you just see a dog and you're just like, oof, yeah, I'm not going anywhere near that. And so
Hmm.
you do wonder how do vets handle that situation. And I've seen some of them in sort of, situations where I've, taken my dog to the vet and they just are so calm. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
something that, normal people don't have. They don't sort of panic or sort of lose their cool. Um, but yeah, it was sort of funny seeing Siegfried just terrified of this big dog.
Yeah, and he says that being fearful is a sign of high intellect.
Of course it is.
Yeah. And so poor Tricky, he keeps getting fed all these rich foods, beef Wellington and foie gras and stuff like that. and, and I mean, the relation between Mrs. Pumphrey and this dog is just very endearing.
Yeah, yeah, it's very endearing and it's definitely something that we see a lot and a lot of older women and men
Yeah.
sort of take in these animals and if they lose their other half or if
Yeah.
they don't have family staying at home, dogs are great companions. But yeah, the side effect is they tend to get treated more like children than they do dogs.
I loved when they were talking on the phone, and she's like, "I would need to hear him," and then Siegfried's like, "Mark, mark, mark," you know, that was really cute. Uh, one nice thing about television versus film is that you have sort of the space to just have kind of quiet moments with characters, that not everything has to be as plot heavy in a show as it might need to be for film. Like I love the little moment in this episode where Siegfried is singing along with the record and you see him eating the picnic basket.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, this picnic basket must have really been something because they were eating
Yes.
at it for like days.
Yes, Mary Poppins picnic basket.
Yeah.
Just kept going and going and going.
And Tricky is getting into it, getting
Yeah,
into the picnic basket. And
funny. Look, the reveal of that was so funny.
yeah,
Like,
it's really funny. And because Siegfried, of course, has blamed Tristan, and Tristan's actually taken the dog out
yeah,
on
he's
walks and
actually
stuff.
he's actually pulling his weight for once and really determined to prove himself. So yeah, it was sort of um I felt so bad for Tristan in this episode because it's the sort of start of him turning a corner and really putting in an effort because
Hmm.
I think with Siegfried and James, you don't doubt that they want to be vets, they want to be the best at their profession, but at this point, like we don't really know if Tristan actually wants to be a vet or if that's just what's been expected of him. Like, does
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
actually have any sort of passion or desire to actually make this his profession?
Yeah. Yeah. And on one hand, you can see Siegfried's point that he kind of doesn't want Tristan to fail. Again, kind of expects him to fail, is kind of trying to protect him from failure. But then again, also like when James says, what if he doesn't fail? Like people can change.
Mm-hmm.
I like when Mrs. Hall takes Siegfried to church. It's like we have much to pray for. That was funny. That was cute. Um, and I mean, this bowl that they have, that the Clive, I think it's Clive. I don't know. I get the names confused, but this bowl of Helen's, this thing is huge.
That's huge. It
It is
is, yeah,
so big.
yeah, the only time I've ever seen anything that sort of scale was like Highland cattle. Like they're huge as well. And they're just big, gentle, like giants.
Yeah.
I've never seen one do more than like very slowly stroll. Like I've never seen one actually move at any sort of pace. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is huge, huge.
Yeah. I
I
would
mean,
be
it's like
really nervous about milking a cow that, I mean, this is a bull, but if there was, if it was for milking, that big, oh my gosh.
it's like above their shoulders. Like that's how big it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, when he gives the testosterone shot, if you like, I'd get out of the way.
Yeah, clear the way.
Yeah. Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/hallmarkies. I really thought it was interesting when Siegfried talks about the parable of the prodigal son, the
Mm-hmm.
lost son, he calls it. He says, I lived it. I lived the story. And I kind of understand it because I also am an older sibling to much younger siblings. And so you were kind of put in not to as extreme because my parents are both active and living, that you are kind of put though in sort of mini mom role, and it's hard to kind of get out of that role and just treat people like adults. It can be challenging. But yeah, the idea of the prodigal son, I thought that was a really good scene. Samuel West, who plays Siegfried, I think is a very excellent actor.
Yeah. And it is interesting that he plays him sort of unlikable at times. I mean, there are scenes where he is just downright like cruel to Tristan, like some of the things that he says, and
Yeah.
he gets so angry that you literally think he's about to burst a blood vessel. Like he goes from 0 to 100 quite often on this show,
Yeah.
but the fact that he is still a very likable character really,
Yeah.
shows how
That's what
well he is at playing
I
this
liked,
character.
having that little scene of him singing along with the record and eating the food, because it just sort of adds warmth to his character.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was really good. And then we got this scene. It was like Hunky James moment with him fixing the flat. That was a good moment. He's like, for Helen, and
Yeah. And Hugh.
and Hugh's getting all jealous, and it was good. That was a good
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, Matthew's so good at playing Hugh. Like, again, he's just one of
Yeah.
these people that, like, everybody knows him from Harry Potter, and they know him as Neville, they know him as this sort of. I think every character that he plays from now on will just be lovable no matter what, just because it's him. So
Right.
I think the way that he plays, and I like the way that he plays Hugh, is not a bad guy. He's just kind of, he's had everything, he's very entitled, he's had everything handed to him. He doesn't really understand the sort of struggle that Helen is going, no matter, despite the fact that they've grown up together, he doesn't really,
Yeah.
he's never lived it.
Right.
But yeah, he's still a very likable character
He's
as
not
well.
changing flats though.
No, definitely, he's not getting his hands dirty, that's for sure.
I mean, this made an impression
Yeah, the
on
fact that he
Helen.
didn't even know if he had tools or a spare
Right.
tire, like he had no clue.
Well, and I think especially if you think about it, back then, changing a flat would have been more, it's still, admirable and helpful today, but
It's simplified now,
they
yeah.
barely had cars then. Like, I mean, only for a few years. So of course, a lot of people wouldn't know how to change a flat, but it was a really good scene. and And I'm just amazed at what a good actor Nicholas Ralph is. I just can't believe this is his first role.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I wonder if he's done like theater and things like that before.
Yeah. He must
He must
have.
have. He must have, yeah.
He must have some training. I would love to interview him. Yeah.
Sure, he's on
So
social media and things.
what was going on with Mrs. Hall and the making the huge meals?
I think that's just something that she's always done. But I mean, a Sunday roast is sort of like
Yeah.
peak.
It seemed like it was
Like,
excessive though, especially so. They kept looking at her like,
I think it was just because they had overindulged so much. Like Siegfried had been into that hamper for
oh yeah,
the
because
majority.
they'd
Yeah,
eaten
he'd
the
been into the
picnic.
Yeah, he'd been into the hamper the majority of the day, and James had had a big breakfast and sort of lunch at his clients.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was just that.
What
But
would
yeah, no,
be your comfort food meal like that? That would it be a roast or turkey, or what would be your
I
thing
mean
like that?
it is such a beige like food group. I like a roast chicken dinner, but it's so good.
Yeah.
When it's done really
When
well,
it's done
it's
good.
so good. Like if the roast potatoes are actually like seasoned really well and baked really well, like yeah, that is, and Yorkshire pudding, like oh my God, like that is like
Yeah.
peak. But yeah, I'm not really into. I used to be into pizzas and things like that, but it's not really my thing anymore. And
I
pastas I find dead heavy.
mm,
So
yeah. Well, it was funny the other day I was watching it was the destination delicious destinations or whatever, and they were doing they were doing Edinburgh, and I was just like, they're not selling this food. I mean, I am
no.
not had like haggis and so I
Yeah.
messaged you and you're like, we don't eat. I mean, I've never even had it.
I've never had haggis. My mum actually had it a couple of days ago.
Uh-huh.
Um but we never have it in the house. It's just because she's actually in hospital just now.
Mhm.
And they'd served haggis as one of the meals, and yeah, we never have it in the house.
They
Like
did at the
um
hospital?
yeah. Yeah,
That's
they had
really
haggis.
funny. It seems
Yeah.
like that's not very healthy
Yeah, they had
for the
haggis in the
hospital.
hospital. Yeah, that's what
Like rich organ meat. That's funny.
yes. But yeah, they have like in all of the sort of fish and chip shops, you can get like deep fried haggis and oh no, thank you.
That's funny. So yes, so then we have the we have the whole scene where Helen's dad thinks that James is an intruder. And then he like that was a real I thought that was a funny scene.
Yeah, of all things to steal, it's the eggs.
Yeah.
Like a well-dressed man just in stealing eggs.
And we find out that Helen evidently can't cook. She's terrible.
Yeah.
That was a funny scene. And the biscuits, it's like they have a unique flavor. Biscuits are hard. I have not successfully ever been able to make biscuits. It's hard to get them so they're not just like a hockey puck, that they're flaky and they're hard.
I can do shortbread quite well, but that's
Mhm.
more
Well, that's like cookie biscuits, like Ted Lasso biscuits. But like biscuits that are like a roll, you know what I mean? Like,
oh right.
yeah.
Like bread type of
Yeah. I mean, these were like it looked like that, kind of like a roll type
yeah,
thing.
I'm not good at any sort of bread making or
Yeah,
anything where
me
anything
neither.
to rise, I'm not interested.
Yeah, it was same.
Yeah, I used to go to like I went to like a culinary sort of college and we had to do like puff pastries from scratch. And I'm like, anything that requires this much effort, like it
Yeah.
takes hours. It takes hours. Some recipes take days. I'm just like preparing things the day before. Ugh, no.
Yeah, I would rather, I mean, it would have to be like so good. And I think what would usually happen with something like that is that I'd end up going through all the process, and because I'm not a skilled baker, it doesn't taste that good. And so then you just feel disappointed. And it's like, just go to a bakery, support your local establishments.
Yeah,
You know?
100%. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
mind things like cakes and things like I find baking easier than cooking. Because, baking is basically
More
you follow all
exact.
of these, yeah, you follow all of these rules that you're hopefully you'll hopefully end up with the result that you want. And cooking is more sort of free flying, but yeah, not with bread.
Yeah. I have a white bread that's really easy and that I can, if I decide, I can pull that off without too much grief. And I used to have a bread maker, and that was kind of nice. You just threw all the stuff in there and that's it.
Yeah,
And
yeah. We have one, but it's one of those things that you use it for a couple of months and then it just sort
yeah,
of sits there.
it's true. Well, so then we have them weighing the weighing tricky, and it's gain weight, which is hilarious. And then Mrs. Hall's the cookies she sent her son get sent back in the mail. And
Hmm.
she says, I've chased him long enough. He knows where I am.
Yeah,
So that's like you said last time, that the sort of the mystery of Mrs. Hall's son continues.
yeah. And I sort of like how it's sort of peppered through the episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I felt like that's the reason why she's over indulging the family, because she's lonely, and so she's like treating, like overdoing it in like taking mothering. She's like overdoing it with the mothering for the boys in the house because of this with her son. But and then they lose Tricky, and then find him in the picnic box. And I know there's a bunch of things that dogs aren't supposed to eat. I know chocolate is one of them, right?
Yeah, that's toxic to dogs.
Mm-hmm. And so there must have been something because they have to pump his stomach.
Yeah, it was chocolate liqueurs, so it's chocolate and
Oh,
alcohol, so two things that dogs aren't supposed to touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially a little tiny dog like that,
Yeah,
would be.
definitely.
And so, and at first James blames Tristan for Tricky, and Siegfried is like, it was me. I was the one.
Yeah, I would have been so mad if he didn't own up to if he
Yeah.
didn't own up to, being the cause of the weight gain.
Mm-hmm. But then there was a good moment that where he says, what if he fails again? And then James says, what if he doesn't?
Hmm.
And so basically he's already taken all the classes that he needs to take. And so now it's just a question of passing the exams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get Siegfried tearing up the check and saying, I'm going to teach you. I'm going to get you ready for the exam.
Yeah, Tristan's worst nightmare just come to fruition. He was getting a check and going back to college life, but no.
Yep. Yeah, and then he has to do the examination on the sheepdog. And
Yeah.
were they trying to say that the sheepdog's owner was hard of hearing or deaf?
Yeah, hard of hearing, so they sort of I can't remember what the actual regiment or anything, but he was pretty much on the front lines, and the explosions had affected his
Okay,
hearing.
because he wasn't signing or anything.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
think it was just to sort of show the struggle of men that had come back from the war.
Yeah, well, this is a really fun episode. I give it like an 8.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's hard to find episodes below you with this show.
Yeah, it's such a good show. It really is. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's Finding Us by Tracy Peterson. You will not want to miss out on this exclusive 30% off book deal from author Tracy Peterson. In her new book, set in 1901, one candid photograph will change the lives of 4 people forever. While taking photos at an exposition, camera girl Eleanor Bennett meets a handsome stranger, Bill Reed, who recognizes the subjects in one of her portraits as a missing woman and her child. As they hunt for the truth, Eleanor and Bill will have to band together to face the danger that follows. Purchase Finding Us for 30% off and free shipping at bakerbookhouse.com. That's bakerbookhouse.com, or use the affiliate link below. Then next we have All's Fair, and James is as pleased as Punch to be the attending vet at the Darrowby show, but Siegfried and Tristan take bets on how long he will last. This is a great episode. I mean, this one was a lot to put on. There were so many characters and so many actors and so many, putting on this whole fair and everything, and just the way it was such a carefully written episode of building up and testing James's integrity throughout, because you not only have all of the citizens coming up to him trying to get him to change his mind about things and be a weak judge, but you have this underlying plot of Helen to asking him to vouch for Clive and his uncomfortableness with that, and he's just such he's got so much integrity, such an honorable person that it just builds for such a satisfying episode.
Yeah, it's a sort of slow burn of an episode, but it's also just like a pressure cooker for James.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he's slowly losing his mind and he's just about to explode by the end of it. And it's sort of not helped by the fact that, Miss Hall, Siegfried, and Tristan are all taking bets on how long how long it'll last.
Yeah.
But yeah, just from like the pony measuring, the pet contest, the having to vouch for yeah, it's a lot.
It
A
was
lot.
so good. And so then we also have Dorothy there, who I forget how is she connected to everything?
She's a friend of Mrs. Hall, so
A
I
friend
believe
of
they worked. Yeah, I believe they worked together. Maybe during the war or
Okay.
sort of post-war.
Okay, yeah. And Siegfried kind of has maybe a little bit of a crush on her. He's very impressed
Yeah,
by her.
and it's also we find out that his wife passed away 4 years ago.
Yes.
I think that's the first mention we get of that.
Mm-hmm. And that he had kind of fell into work as his coping mechanism for dealing with that.
Again, I do. It's sort of interesting that they held that information back until like episode 5.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you'd sort of put that up at the front, maybe people would soften to him a lot quicker. But I think it's an interesting choice that they held it back for so long.
It is. And I was like, did I miss it? Did they mention it? But I don't think they did. So yeah. And then we starts out there. So they are opening the practice up to the fair goers to kind of come in and see and look and bring they're having they have like a competition for I'm not sure exactly what it is, the best pet or I
think
forget.
it's the best pet, and I think it's for the kids. But yeah, it's very generic and very like how do you compare some of these animals to each other?
Yeah. And Siegfried's trying to drum up more clients for the practice. And they start out with a ferret emergency, and ferrets are gross. Like ferrets at all. They smell. They're just, I don't know, not for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, quite a lot of people here have ferrets. Yeah, not for me. They bite a lot, and I had like hamsters and gerbils and things growing up. Um, yeah, the life expectancy of them is really upsetting. So it's like I'm not having it.
I don't know if they're still, but for a while ferrets were illegal in the States. I don't know if they still are, but not for me. And then we have Helen asking James to vouch for Clive, but he's concerned because he had to give Clive a testosterone shot, and he feels like that is a sign that it's not it's not up to the high standards they're trying to get for it. Was that what your take?
Yeah, and I think he'd also not heard that any of the cows were in calf, so he didn't know, he hadn't heard that any of them were pregnant. And I think his realization of that added to the fact that everyone is sort of the actual owner of the cows is acting kind of sketchy and avoiding them. I think that definitely sort of tips him off, and just sort of it escalates and escalates to the point of him sort of realizing that the bull is not performing.
Yeah, and how is Hugh connected with all of this? Is it
He just wanted Helen to he silenced it so that the deal would go through, so that Helen would get the money. But again, that would mean that James would have to lie. Omission, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and so then people keep coming up to him and trying to get their animals in the various competitions, but they're all saying they're either like they don't have them in the right height bracket, they don't have them in the right weight bracket, all this stuff. And there's one dog that has a temperature that's sick, and the owner keeps trying to get him into the competition, and James refuses. And it really is like a boiling pot, like simmering, getting throughout this whole thing till finally, he's going to lose it. And then Dorothy says to Siegfried, says, "You've built a life doing what you love most. Not many people manage that," which I think is true. It's hard.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's hard to be employed doing what you love and also to keep loving it,
Yeah.
to not have that ruin your love.
Yeah. Like my dad always said, like, find a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. Like that's like that sort of classic saying.
Yeah.
And he was a painting decorator and he took a lot of pride in that. He felt that. But yeah, I've just never found a job that I enjoy and love. It always feels like work.
Yeah. I I mean, I'm lucky because I really do love what I get to do. I just wish that was more profitable. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
always like on the edge of barely making it. But I don't know. I guess on the flip side of that, I find a way to figure it out. So I guess that's good. But he says things don't always work out the way we expect, but you move forward with hope. That is the key.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when we find out about he lost his wife 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was interesting seeing him and Tristan having a conversation about that. Because I imagine she would have been a big part of Tristan's upbringing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tristan says, like, I miss her too.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we have times with Siegfried training Tristan, and you do get some of Tristan, pushing Siegfried about Dorothy, and kind of teasing him a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, certainly. I mean, if it was my brother, my older brother, he would have teased me mercilessly, or end to it. I mean, the two of us absolutely could never work together. We did briefly, and it was not
good.
It was not productive. Not a productive situation. Like my brother has more of sort of the artist mentality of things, but yet he's super intense about everything. And so we just are really different about, like, it's interesting because I am organized, but then I also am not a perfectionist, if that makes sense. So I don't know, we're just really, really, really different. We would not work well. We have and didn't work well together. Okay, let's see here. Where were we? So you got all the different people with their animals. I mean, who knew that the Yorkshire is so exotic?
Yeah. You get parrots, you get pretty much everything you think of.
Yeah. And then Tristan says, that I miss her too. She would want you to try and be happy. And which, I mean, it's just the thing with grief is that everybody has a different journey.
Yep.
4 years might not be very long.
It might feel like nothing to him.
Yeah. I did think the little boy bringing the goldfish was really funny.
Yeah, and I do like that. James's, metric was who knows the most about animals. It's like who's the most potential to be a vet. They can do.
Yeah, and then I think it was I can't remember if it was Tristan or Siegfried. One of them tells James, just because there's a firing squad lined up doesn't mean you have to step in line before it. And I think that is true, that you don't have to pick every single battle in life.
Yeah.
You can just let things go.
Yeah, James doesn't seem like the type, though. He seems like
It can be hard, especially online, to just be like, okay, I don't have to fight this. I disagree with this person's opinion.
sometimes I
Yeah,
get halfway through a tweet that like I reply to something, and I'm like, it's really not worth it, and I just
yeah.
delete it.
I'm just gonna let this one go.
And hit block.
Yeah. And then we have this, he's struggling about Clive, and
hmm
then he confronts Hugh, and Hugh asks him to do it for Helen.
hmm
So he's really struggling then of what, and I guess this implies that Hugh knows about James's interest in Helen a little bit. Do it for Helen.
Yeah, I think he does have an inkling, but I also think that someone as arrogant as Hugh probably doesn't see James as any sort of competition.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like he's that full of himself, or that, not in a bad way. I don't, like I say, I don't think he's a bad person, but I do think he's been handed everything in life and never had
Mm-hmm.
to really come up against anything that sort of to get in his way.
Yeah.
Um, that I really don't think he sees James as any sort of competition.
Yeah. And then we have Jenny and Mrs. Hall playing the shooting game.
hmm
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
It was fun. Yeah, and I do like her comment of like, what did you think we did during the war?
Yeah. That's good. That's good. So Clive ends up winning. James is very uncomfortable about it. He's uncomfortable recommending. He tells the truth about Clive, and then Hugh gets very upset. Helen's upset. And then Hugh says to Helen, "It's because I love you. I would do anything in the world to make you happy." And so yeah, I think that is trying to bring some humanity into the character,
hmm
because you don't want, I mean, Helen is a smart person, so when you have it's fine in like a Hallmark movie because it's usually just like the first 5 minutes. You know, it's fine to just say, okay, this is with this jerk, it makes no sense, but like it just gets the plot going in some movies. But for you need to have some reason why she's with Hugh. He needs to be a human character with good and bad aspects. Otherwise, her character doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I do like that when James does reveal that Clive is lame, that she doesn't blame James.
Mhm.
Like immediately, she doesn't blame him. Um,
Yeah.
when she realizes that Hugh is the one that's sort of asked people to keep quiet about it and let the deal go through. She is, you know, the blame is sort of placed in the right place, but I did find him to be very manipulative in this scene. Like this is the thought of losing her is the time that he tells her how he feels about her. That
Yeah.
just felt very sort of manipulative.
Yeah. That's
But
true.
also played well because Tristan and James sort of watching him work his way back into her good graces
It's
right
manipulative,
away.
but it does feel authentic to that character, that he
Oh,
would be kind of desperate and he would say those things.
100%. Like he
Yeah.
wouldn't say those things until he was pushed to the point of
Yeah.
yeah.
And so this is when James loses it. I have never in my life witnessed such unsportsmanlike and downright criminal behavior.
Yeah, and
It
this is
was
all
so funny.
when he feels like he's winning the town over, like that people sort of back him.
Yeah. And then he finds out that they've been placing the bet against him.
Yeah, Mrs. Hall wins.
This is a great episode. I give this episode a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, same. It's so
It
good.
was so good. All right, so then we have the last episode of the season for the Christmas episode. It's called A Cure for All Ills. James celebrates his birthday, but personal and professional worries put a damper on the event. James and Tristan ignore Siegfried's advice and operates on a prized cow. So yeah, this was, I think, another good episode. I really enjoyed it. I think that it did a lot for our characters
Mhm.
and had a lot of memorable moments. And the fact that they got this giant cow they were able to pull off this whole operation scene. I
Mhm.
don't know how they did that. And
Yeah, and the fact,
make the incision and it was very convincing.
yeah, it was gross as well. It was,
What?
yeah, it was vile. Yeah, this is a really good episode. And it feels like it really brings a lot of characters full circle.
Mhm.
Not all of them, but yeah, it definitely, having James sort of really feel like he's a part of the town and a part of practice, and it also sort of pushes Tristan in a way that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also seeing Siegfried in a vulnerable state it was
Yeah.
interesting as well. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting episode as a finale because it doesn't do anything huge, but yeah, like you said, emotionally it really does work.
Yeah, and I think the ending when you can see that James is just about to burst into tears, like he's holding it in because he doesn't want Helen to know. And Tristan and Siegfried know and they see, and I don't know, all the acting was so subtle and worked so well in those
Mhm.
scenes. It
Yeah.
was very good. It starts out with James giving Jenny a kitten that they had, and that was really cute. Do you
Yeah.
have a cat,
It's
or are you only dogs?
I'm only dogs. I did have a cat growing up, but he was an outdoor cat. Um, but yeah, I'm mainly a dog person. Like cats are very independent. Once they
Yes.
get past the kitten stage, they're very independent.
Mhm.
Dogs pretty much need you every waking moment of the day, it feels like.
Yeah. No, it's true. I always joke, the cats, you have to earn their love. With dogs, they just give it. But they make me sneeze, unfortunately, or I probably would have a cat.
Yeah, I
And they
felt
make
so
my
bad.
eyes
So,
get
like,
puffy.
I had a guy come in to fix our internet. He was installing new internet,
Uh-huh.
and he was in the house, and I've got a big white dog, and he casts constantly, and we're in the summer, and it's really really intense right now.
Mhm.
There's just dog hair everywhere. Like I just admit defeat at this point. Like I'm not gonna get it all. It's just an
Yeah.
everyday battle.
Mhm.
But yeah, he was dying. Like he was sneezing and rubbing his eyes, and I felt so bad. And I do get a little, hay fevery when I'm, the pollen's quite
Mhm.
high. It's very rare. But I did have some anti-allergy stuff in the house, and I was like, "Do you do you want something for?" He said,
Yeah.
I have these tablets. They're just like over the counter ones." He's like, "No, I'm allergic to those as well." I'm
Oh
like, "Oh my
no.
god."
Well, the problem is that even the ones that say non-drowsy do still make me drowsy for the
Mm.
allergy. Not as bad as Benadryl, that'll knock me out, but I know I still feel like they leave me kind of hanging. So, but But anyway, Siegfried has a cold. He's sick, and like most
And
men,
flu.
unwilling to admit that he's sick.
Yeah, he has the man flu, which is a very different breed than normal flu.
For years, my father, every single Christmas, he would get, we called it his Yuletide respiratory infection. And it was the worst. It was like an insult to him as a human that he would get sick, It was always mental and physical sick. But yeah, Siegfried doesn't want to admit that he's sick. James has the full day planned, and so then Tristan ends up taking over, and that was just nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
It was good. And that whole scene where he has to go into the office to look stuff up
Mm-hmm.
for the chickens, that was hilarious.
Yeah. He's not confident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a really funny whole Seinfeld thing about doctors, and he says, I don't know why they have that office. They don't want you to know that they're looking stuff up. Never seen that before. But yeah, he was great. The chicken that he wasn't sure what was going on, and it's James's birthday, and they are working on a surprise party for James. Mrs. Hall's made a cake, and have you ever had a surprise party thrown for you?
No, I would hate it. Yeah, I
Same.
can't think of anything worse.
Well,
I
I just
don't
feel
like attention. I don't like attention. That would just
yeah.
be awful.
I guess for me, too, part of the fun of like entertaining in general is the like the planning part of it, and the making it cute and all match, and like buying the decorations and stuff like that. I mean, it's so different obviously if it's for you, but I don't know, I just feel like you almost lose something at being a surprise, and it just seems like it always leads to trouble because people feel like, oh well, you forgot about my birthday and you don't care at all. I have never had a surprise party, but I think people know that I don't like surprises. So,
Yeah, they're like definitely not.
and so then, we had a couple surprises. One year growing up, my grandparents surprised my dad because they were in California. We were in Maryland, and they showed up for his birthday. And so we've had things like that, but that was fun. Him just open the door. Oh,
Oh,
my
there you
parents are right there. That was fun. But and so Siegfried's getting very frustrated, and he thinks that Tristan is just wasting time, doesn't realize that he spent the whole day working. And he says, I give up. It's your life, Tristan. And then he sees Tristan doing all these drawings,
Mm-hmm.
and including one, is it Greta Garbo?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's I think it's one advantage of knowing nothing is anything seems possible.
I felt so bad for Tristan. Like he does so much in this episode and he gets no credit until like the very end.
Yeah. And yeah, Tristan's, do you only see me as not serious?
Mm.
And then yeah, the whole thing with this cow, and he's got an abscess on the throat.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go back forth, and Siegfried says there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing else to be done. You must just be honest with them. And he decides, I mean, it makes sense because he decides to do the operation, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But the alternative is it's just dead. So like,
it's gonna die anyway. Yeah.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
don't see the harm. I mean, I guess from Siegfried's perspective, giving him false hope, maybe.
Yeah.
But
I think putting it down to the family is the only way to really do that.
mhm.
And it's interesting to imagine in today's, veterinary sciences that they would probably be able to like get a 3D image of that so that they would know exactly where it is and what blood vessels it was near and all of
Mm,
that type of stuff. But the fact that they were
yeah.
just going in blind in these days was, yeah, it's
Well,
definitely like very daunting.
yeah, they could probably do like laparoscopy, like with a laser, go in and things that you can do now that you couldn't have done back then.
Mhm.
I would think. But no one had ever performed such an operation. And so Siegfried apologizes and he says, I wasn't completely in the right today. So he's like, are you saying you were wrong? I'm not saying that.
Yeah, you kind of have to take what you get.
And he promotes James to senior vet, which is pretty cool because he hasn't been there that long.
Yeah, but no pay rise though, so what's really the point?
Yeah. And they have the surprise party for James, which is fun
Mm-hmm.
for the story. And he gets a hat and scarf from his mom.
Yeah, that was so cute when he's wearing the hat.
Really cute. It really was. And then so Siegfried is trying to kind of set him up with these two women at the party, but then
Tristan,
Helen and
yeah.
Hugh show up,
Hmm.
and so he's like, well, maybe I should go out with this other girl just to try to kind of make Helen a little bit jealous, but it's not working. And then Maggie shows up and challenges
Mm-hmm.
Tristan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This relationship kind of confuses me. Like, I understand from her perspective that, Tristan is kind of flighty and that he was probably meant to leave at this point as well. He's supposed to
Mm-hmm.
go back to college.
Yeah.
So it was definitely like temporary from his perspective. But yeah,
It is
I
kind
think
of
at this,
confusing of what does she want? Does she want like to be his permanent girlfriend?
I think she does, and I do understand that she probably didn't want to put herself out there for someone that, probably wasn't thinking about her in the same terms. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just wonder what the show's intention was. Is it some setting up something
Yeah.
long term? Like, is this going to be like his sort of end game relationship, or is it
Yeah.
something else down the line?
Yeah. Well, Siegfried gets upset. He says, it's my practice. And Mrs. Hall says, it's their cow. Let the farmer, let him try. And so, like we said, it's a success. And he promotes James. And then Helen wishes James a happy birthday and tells him that she's engaged. And it's interesting because she never really seems that attached to Hugh,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess is she just getting somebody that she enjoys and that she admires, a friend? Is she getting friendship and love confused?
Yeah, and it also feels like you have to think of women in those times.
Mm-hmm.
She's probably just following the sort of the script of back then. Like
Yeah.
a lot of those relationships would have been with people that they grew up with.
Yeah.
And those relationships just develop into marriages. And I think the idea of someone coming in like James, that's not something that she was expecting or happens
Yeah.
a lot in these towns. A lot of times it's very small communities and they stay very small communities. There's not a lot
Yeah.
of people coming in and out, especially back in those days. So yeah, I feel like it's a bit of both with Helen.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I just, like I said, this ending scene when he's just holding back the tears. You can see he's so close. He's just so sad. I thought was very well acted, and just the scene of this little family unit that they've made and them all coming to support him because they know he's sad. It was
Yeah, and
really
them
good.
all walking home together was so cute.
Yeah, yeah. I think this one's a 10. I don't know what else you could ask for in a show like this.
No.
It was funny, it was sweet, it was romantic, it was great characters, great moments for all the characters, the incredible set piece of this cow and the operation, how they managed to pull that off and make it look real. Everything. It was so good.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very good. Let us know what you think of these 3 episodes. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section or on Twitter. And we'll be doing a whole breakdown. We will be doing a whole breakdown on the Christmas special. It felt like that feels Hallmarkies to do. So that should be fun. And Michelle, how can people follow you?
On Twitter at Michelle R. Benson.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So please check that out. Also, make sure you're following the Hallmarkies podcast and Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast. And if you were listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. Really appreciate that. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Most of our viewers on YouTube are not subscribers. So if you're one of those, please, please, please subscribe. It really helps us a lot. And check out the Patreon group and merch store. We really appreciate that. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.